Ms. Post, we welcome you. As we were told by our prior applicant, you're the bottom half because 31, we're going downhill now, so. Don't take that the wrong way.
I would guess that's a good sign.
Well, you're at the top going down, so you see.
Okay.
I'm sure it's a good sign.
Anyway, we're ready for your opening statement, and we appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Justice Wiggins, Commissioners. Whew, I'm really nervous. This is an excellent opportunity for me. I wish first to express my appreciation to all of you for all the time that you've all taken from your busy lives and careers to participate in this process. I know that is unpaid position, and that for many of you, it's a hardship financially and otherwise to be in Des Moines all this week, and also the other work that you've done in preparation for this week. I was encouraged by several lawyers and non-lawyers to apply for the Supreme Court, and it took me a great deal of time and soul searching to figure out if I was going to put my name into consideration. Ultimately, I applied for the position because I was afraid, as well as many other lawyers in the state were afraid, that because of the great amount of public scrutiny this position has gotten and the work of the commission has gotten, that many lawyers would not apply. And happily, and maybe you're thinking otherwise by the time of myself on Tuesday, the afternoon of a very long week, that there are many, many good qualified candidates for this job. And for that, I'm very thankful. When I was thinking about whether or not I should apply for this position, I was struck by two questions. And the first was, what kind of attributes or personality traits do I want to see a judge have in this position? And secondly, what did I bring, or what do I bring to the position of the Supreme Court? First, in looking at the question is what kind of personality traits or attributes I would like to see in a justice. The first thing I would like to see is someone who's practical, hardworking, someone who's honest and forthright and humble, someone who follows the Constitution and the law and hesitates to make new law, someone with a lot of legal and life experience and a judicial temperament, someone who's reasonable, logical, and an excellent writer, and finally, someone who knows that they're accountable to the citizens of the state of Iowa for the administration of justice. What do I bring to this position, and what makes me qualified? I am a mother, a wife, and a full-time lawyer. One of the persons I greatly admire is Michelle Obama, the First Lady of the United States. Whenever she's asked to describe herself, she always says, first and foremost, she is the mother of Malia and Sasha. I am first and foremost the mother of two children, a son who's 21 and a daughter who's 25. I am also the wife of 34 years and a lawyer for the past 30. In interviewing for this position, I was asked, why is it important to have women on the court? And just as a jury should be a reflection of one's peers, also I think the court should be a reflection of the population of the state of Iowa. At least half of the state is female, and nearly every state board is mandated to be gender balanced. The legislature believes that this is important, and so do I. What do I believe that women bring to the position that males do not? I believe women bring a different perspective and a way of thinking. We may arrive at the same solution of problems, but the way we get there is different. It is also important, I believe, that people see a reflection of themselves in government and in their courts and feel that they are indeed represented. I apologize for the amount of shaking I'm doing. I take medication that does this, and I'm also very nervous. Why am I qualified for the court? I grew up on a farm in northwest Iowa, Polina, Iowa. I started college at Northwestern College in Orange City right after high school. I went there for 2 years until I transferred to the University of Iowa in 1976. My current spouse, or actually my only spouse, he was also going to the Northwestern College. and was starting at law school the summer of 1976. I wanted to pursue him as well as an English degree, so I transferred to Iowa City. I worked my way through college, both at Northwestern College and the University of Iowa. I graduated from the University of Iowa in 1977 with a bachelor's degree in English literature and began law school at Iowa during the summer of 1978. I was part of the accelerated program at Iowa in 1978. My class was to graduate during the summer of 1980, but I opted instead to intern in the Lynn County Attorney's Office. I handled simple and serious misdemeanors in that courthouse. During law school, I was also able to work with the Prisoner Assistance Clinic at the University of Iowa Law School. I was very lucky to work with Professor Barbara Schwartz in representing inmates from Fort Madison and Anamosa in their post-conviction relief proceedings. And I have to say, walking through the yard at Fort Madison is one thing that you never, ever forget. After I graduated in December from law school, I took the bar exam in January of 1981. I didn't have a job. I had a friend who was practicing in Chicago, so I traveled to Illinois and took the Illinois bar exam in February of 1981. My spouse had been working or was working in Iowa City as an attorney at that time and had an offer of employment in central Iowa, so we moved to the Des Moines area. I was hired as an assistant attorney general for Attorney General Tom Miller in the Tort Claims Division. I worked there for 3 years. I represented the state of Iowa in medical, dental, and veterinarian malpractice, slip and fall cases, wrongful death actions, about anything you can think of that the state of Iowa might be sued for. Oftentimes, I would be in rural Iowa counties, and in some counties, I was the first female ever to appear as a lawyer before a judge in that county. I left the Attorney General's office in 1983 and joined the Grafen Sidney Law Firm and practiced with that firm until December of 1995. I represented various clients in my capacity as a partner with that law firm. Primarily, we represented defendants, whether they be individuals or companies, employers, insurance carriers. There were various cases that I worked on, including motor vehicle accidents, bad faith litigation, workers' compensation, and environmental cases. In late 1995, there was an opening in the Iowa Workers' Compensation Office. The commissioner at that time, Byron Orton, was appointed labor commissioner. I was encouraged to apply for that position because of my experience in workers' compensation, and I was appointed by Governor Terry Branstad in January of 1996 and confirmed by the Senate. I served the remainder of that term, which was a one-year term, and was reappointed in 1997 to serve a 6-year term. I left that position in 2002 with 1 year remaining and joined my present law firm, Bradshaw, Fowler, Proctor, and Fairgrave. My experiences working as Workers' Compensation Commissioner gave me both legal experience in writing final agency decisions, as well as experience in administration of a state agency. I was the administrator of a 33-member agency. We had 12 lawyers and 21 support personnel. I was responsible for the budget of the agency. I was responsible for going to the legislature and asking for funding for our agency as well as funding for special projects. I was responsible for the day-to-day operations of the agency and also responsible for the Unemployment Appeals Division of the Iowa Workforce Development at one time, and I think that was approximately a year or two. While I was commissioner, I worked on an international workers' compensation group and was a member of their board, and was also appointed by the Secretary of Energy to serve on the Federal Worker Advisory Committee for several years. As commissioner, I worked hard to lower costs, increase efficiencies and accuracies. One of the most important things I believe I learned as commissioner was as a decision maker, and that as the Workers' Compensation Commissioner, I had de novo review of the deputy or administrative law judge's decisions. I learned that perception is reality in that position, and that one of the most important things, or the most important thing, is that litigants feel that they have a fair and full opportunity to present their case, that the person who is hearing their case is going to consider all the evidence and with fair and impartiality. I believe that the denial of due process and equal protection is something that I don't believe happened before the agency, but one thing I think that I learned is that people need to know that they are being given a fair opportunity to be heard. I worked collaboratively on decisions when I was the Workers' Compensation Commissioner, although I was the final agency head who wrote the final agency decisions, and after you write the decisions, they go on appeal to district court and on to the Iowa appellate courts. In my decision-making, it was my practice. I had two chief deputies who worked with me in writing the appeal decisions, and we would normally meet once a week. We would discuss cases. We'd bring up anything that we wished to talk over with the others, and we'd usually reach a mutual decision in those cases. I currently practice with the Bradshaw Law Firm in Des Moines. I've been a shareholder with the firm since April of 2002 and primarily represent employers and insurance carriers in workers' compensation litigation. I've been retained on occasion as an expert witness on behalf of both injured workers and employers and carriers. Workers' compensation is a very specialized portion of the law, and one of the things I bring to the court is that specialization in administrative law. In summary, why do I think I bring to this position? I think I bring a varied level of legal experience, public service, both in service in the public as well in private practice. It is with great humility that I ask you to support my appointment as Supreme Court Justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Post. Any questions from the left side of the table? Ms. Lawler,
Ms. Post.
Yes.
take the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Under the question of why you are seeking this position, you said that I believe that I represent a point of view not currently represented on the Supreme Court. Could you elaborate on that, please?
I think what I was talking about was primarily being a female. We don't have any females on the court at this time, and we've only had one or two in the past. I also come from a relatively modest background. I had to work my whole life. I don't come from a law family. My father, brother, sister, parent, uncle, aunt have not been lawyers. I come from a farming or agricultural family. So I think I bring that kind of perspective to the court that I'm not sure has necessarily been represented in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Any others on this side? Mrs. Redenbaugh?
Thank you, Ms. Post, for being here today and having your name in the pool of applicants. I've been asking some of the applicants, especially the women applicants, the same question, I guess, when I look at their experience. I'm wondering if you, as a layperson, I'm wondering how much you're in our courthouses around the state, at the district court level, because I'm not sure with your workman's comp, are you trying those to administrative judges, or are you in the district court? And you'll have to explain that to me, but my concern is whether or not you're in the trenches as far as understanding the needs of the stakeholders in those courthouses today, because the Supreme Court has the administrative duties of the court system. Do you understand the needs of the litigants, the lawyers, the judges, the staff, court reporters, and so forth in those courthouses? Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your question. In my past experience, with the Attorney General's office and also the Grievance City Law Firm, I practice much more in district court throughout the state. When I was Workers' Compensation Commissioner, obviously I was in Des Moines and traveled around giving speeches to many, many groups, but I was not practicing in district courts. And since I've been with the Bradshaw Law Firm, my practice primarily has been in workers' compensation, which although we have hearings throughout the state, it's not in district court. It's usually in another venue. So I do have experience in district court, and how am I familiar with the needs of the district court and other personnel? I think I've been very active with the Iowa bar. I have held various leadership positions with the Bar Association. I think I'm familiar enough, there's enough lawyers that talk about the needs of the court and the judicial districts, and I think I'm pretty familiar with them. Am I seeing it day to day? No, I'm not. I have friends that are judges, so I hear a lot about the needs of the courts and the court personnel, but I don't have day to day contact in the district courts.
Thank you.
Mr. Holm?
Thank you, Justice Wiggins, and good afternoon, Ms. Post. You've obviously had a very excellent and varied legal career, but it seems to me that a lot of the representation that you've done of clients has been either for insurance companies or defendants in workers' compensation cases and personal injury cases. What would you tell us to assure us that if you were appointed to the Supreme Court, you would give plaintiffs in those types of cases a fair consideration?
I think as a workers' compensation commissioner, I had to do that and be fair and impartial, to both parties, to all parties, be they injured workers or defendants. So I would say that I think I have it. Even though I have represented primarily defendants in my career, I think I do have a background of also being fair and looking at the record. I think one of the important things that I experienced when I was work comp commissioner is to read the record you're reading and to be able to look at a case based on the facts and the evidence without regard to who is the plaintiff, who is the defendant, whether, what kind of stake they might have had in the outcome of the case.
Mr. Cook?
You obviously have a very impressive resume and many accomplishments in your legal career, including the 11 years at the Grief and Sidney Law Firm where you and I were partners. I don't want to ask you about that. I do want to ask you about something you put here in your materials that publicly disclosed, and that is the liver transplant that you had in 2006. You made reference to it, and you did so for a reason, and tell us why you did.
A couple of reasons, I think. One is that I think any kind of experience like that changes your life, whether you want it to or not, and certainly changed my outlook on life. Plus, I'm on medication that makes me shake. So, but the reason I think I put it down was because it makes me different from other people or other lawyers. My law partners were great when I had to take time off for work, for obviously to have the transplant, and I think partially it was to acknowledge that, as well as to acknowledge my own hard work and perseverance in getting back to work and becoming again full-time lawyer after recovery from that. But primarily I think it changes your life. It changes how you look at things. It changes your perspective, all those kinds of things. It makes you have a responsibility not only to yourself but to others. And when someone gives you life, I think it makes you assess what's important in your life and to try to give back to the public or society or your family or whatever because of that experience.
Thank you.
Any questions on this side? Ms. Dixon?
Good afternoon, Ms. Post. As in your capacity as the Workers' Compensation Commissioner, I would assume that the budget would have been an administrative challenge, but could you talk about what other administrative challenges you had besides the budget when you were the commissioner?
That, of course, was the primary challenge because I think every year I was there it was reduced. But the other challenge, being responsible for 12 lawyers was a challenge. One of the aspects of state government is, at least the agency that I was in charge of, is they're almost nearly everyone in the agency's contract covered. So making sure that you complied with the contract as far as AFSCME was concerned, and making sure you complied with all the state and federal rules. The challenges were that as most state agencies, at least while I was in charge of the Workers' Compensation Division, is you're given many, many responsibilities under the law and not necessarily enough money to cover those. So you have to make choices about how you're going to fulfill your responsibility under the law to the best of your ability with the limited resources you have. So I think that was a challenge. Trying to allocate job duties and responsibilities among the staff. Those are just a few that I can recall off the top of my head. But Iowa was a little bit different, as the Workers' Compensation Commissioner in Iowa is both responsible for the administrative duties of the agency as well as the legal duties and writing final agency decisions, while most states have those duties separate. So in Iowa, you get a lot of experience doing both things.
Any other questions down this way? Mr. Pace.
Hi, Ms. Post, how are you? I don't know if you recall when we met. I do. It was at the bench bar conference in Okoboji, and we were introduced by now Judge Paulson, who's a friend of yours, probably from your time in Cedar Rapids. She was there at that point in time. But I recall the three of us having a conversation. We were talking about how great it was that, in part, that we were able to be in small groups with Supreme Court justices and talk about the court. And I recall that we talked about sort of what Supreme Court justices do and what they ought to do. And I recall we agreed. Whatever we came up with, I remember thinking, well, that's good. The three of us have agreed. But I know you've given that some thought, being here today. Just what do you think as far as the challenges that we've got coming? But what, if you get up there, what do you want to do with the position?
Well, I think the first responsibility is to timely write decisions. That, of course, is number one, I think, on the list for the Supreme Court justices, and also to represent the Supreme Court. I think we've all discovered in the past year or so that the Supreme Court needs to have a face and needs to have its face out there to the people, so that people appreciate all the hard work and other things that they do. It's incredible the amount of duties the Supreme Court justices have and the limited amount of time they have to do it. I remember the Okoboji bench bar conference, but I really don't remember discussing the Supreme Court at that time. But it was great, and opportunities like that where people can get out and meet the justices is wonderful. I think you can put when you meet somebody over coffee or whatever, I think it's a lot different than appearing in front of them. You have a lot more respect and camaraderie and that kind of thing. I guess I would have to still say that I think the primary responsibility of the justice is to write decisions and be fair and impartial in the rulings and do them in a timely manner.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Post, and we wish you the best of luck.